I was standing in the hallway of my own wedding venue, clutching a bouquet so tight my knuckles were white, and the delicate stems of the lilies were starting to bruise under my grip, when I heard my mother's voice hiss through the cracked door of the bridal suite, telling my sister that they never should have let me come back into their lives at all. It was a haunting, sickening echo of the day 10 years ago when they told me, "Don't come home, your sister doesn't want you there." But this time, I wasn't a scared 19-year-old girl with a single suitcase and nowhere to go. I was a grown woman, a bride, and I was about to walk into a room full of people and burn every single bridge my parents had spent a decade building. Looking back at that moment, I have to ask you, would you have kept the peace for the sake of your wedding day just to avoid a scene? Or would you have done what I did and finally told the truth in front of everyone, even if it meant watching your entire family dynamic crumble into ash right next to your wedding cake? Tell me in the comments if you think I was justified or if I went too far, because I'm still processing if the revenge was worth the total fallout that followed. To truly understand the gravity of what happened in that hallway, you have to understand the toxic atmosphere of the Miller household where I grew up, a place where love was a finite resource, and I was always at the bottom of the list. My sister, Maya, was the golden child, the sun around which everything revolved, and I was just a stray planet expected to stay in a cold, silent, and obedient orbit. Maya was 2 years older, and from the moment I could walk, I was taught that my primary job in life was to not upset her, to not outshine her, and to never, ever ask for more than the scraps of attention she left behind. Maya was beautiful and talented, yes, but she possessed a terrifying, almost surgical talent for being the victim in every possible scenario. If Maya broke a glass, it was because I had startled her by breathing too loudly in the next room. If she failed a math test, it was because my desk lamp was distracting her through the walls while I tried to study. My parents, David and Alina, didn't just enable this behavior. They worshipped at the altar of her fragility, treating her tantrums like holy scripture that had to be obeyed. I was labeled the difficult daughter, the hard child, the unfeeling one, simply because I had the audacity to exist without needing a constant crisis to be managed. I remember one Christmas when I was 12 and she was 14. I had saved up every penny of my allowance for an entire year to buy a specific set of professional artist paints, and because she didn't get a gift that she felt was equally special, she threw a tantrum that lasted 3 days and ruined the entire holiday. My parents ended up taking my paints away, claiming I was being selfish, and gave them to her just to keep the peace. That was the blueprint for my entire childhood, giving up my space, my things, my achievements, and my voice so that Maya wouldn't have a meltdown. The real breaking point, the moment that fractured my life into before and after, happened when I was 19. I had just finished my freshman year of college on a partial scholarship I worked my tail off to get, maintaining a 4 GPA while working in the campus library. I was exhausted, lonely, and so incredibly excited to come home for the summer to work a local job at a bakery and save every penny for my sophomore year. 2 days before my flight, I called my mom to check in and see what time they were picking me up from the airport, imagining the smell of home and the comfort of my own bed. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was cold and clinical, like she was reading a script written by a stranger. She told me that Maya was going through a very sensitive time with her mental health after a minor breakup, and that having me in the house would be a trigger for her anxiety. I was stunned, standing in my dorm room with my boxes already packed. I asked how I could possibly be a trigger just by sleeping in my own room and staying out of her way, promising I would be like a ghost. That's when my dad took the phone and said the words that have played on a loop in my head for 10 long years. "Don't come home, your sister doesn't want you there, and frankly, we need to prioritize her peace right now. You're an adult now, figure it out. Find somewhere else to stay." They didn't offer money for a hotel. They didn't offer a compromise. They didn't even ask if I had a place to go. They just hung up. I spent that entire summer sleeping on a rotating cast of friends' couches, working 3 different jobs, waitressing, cleaning houses, and graveyard shifts at a gas station, and eating ramen noodles in the dark. I didn't get an apology. I didn't get a "how are you?" I was totally erased from the family history. My mother even untagged me from old Facebook photos because seeing my face upset Maya's delicate constitution. For years, I built a life from the dirt up, fueled by a mixture of spite and the desperate need to prove I was worth something. I worked through college with no help. I found a successful career in interior design, and eventually, I met Marcus. Marcus was the first person who looked at me and didn't ask me to shrink myself. He didn't see me as a trigger or a burden. He showed me what unconditional love actually looked like. It wasn't a transaction, it wasn't a competition, and it didn't require me to disappear. But as I got more successful, and my life with Marcus started looking more and more stable, especially after he inherited his grandfather's estate, my parents suddenly developed a very convenient and very sudden case of amnesia. About 2 years ago, when Maya's life hit a massive wall, she lost her third job in a year due to her own explosive temper, and her long-term boyfriend finally realized he was dating a narcissist and left her. My parents reached out. They started with small, manipulative texts. "Thinking of you. We miss our little girl. Life is too short for grudges." I was foolish. I was still that 19-year-old girl deep down, hungry for the parents I never had, so I let them back in. I invited them to dinners, I let them meet Marcus, and when he proposed with a ring that cost more than my parents' car, I saw a glint in my mother's eye that I should have recognized as greed, not joy. I thought, this is it. This is the fresh start. Maybe they finally see me. I even made Maya a bridesmaid, thinking that if I showed her enough kindness, if I brought her into my circle of happiness, she would finally stop seeing me as an enemy. But as the wedding approached, the mask began to slip more and more every day. My parents were constantly whispering in my ear that I should be more sensitive to Maya's feelings because she was struggling to watch me get everything she wanted. They complained about the food choices, the expensive flowers, and the fact that Marcus's family was too loud and intimidating. Which brings us back to the wedding day, the white dress, and that cold hallway. I had forgotten my phone in the bridal suite after our professional photos, and as I walked back to grab it, I heard the voices inside, muffled but crystal clear in their malice. My mother was saying, "Alina, just keep smiling for the photos. We just have to endure this one day, then we are set. Once she's married to Marcus and they're settled in that new estate, we can start the conversation about the loan for your new apartment and my credit card debt. We've played nice for 2 years, and frankly, she owes us for all the stress she caused by being so stubborn and difficult when she was younger." Then came Maya's voice, sharp, mocking, and filled with a decade of hidden triumph. "I still can't believe she actually bought the story that I was the one who didn't want her home back then. You and Dad were the ones who wanted her gone so you could turn her room into my walk-in closet and stop paying for her groceries. And you just blamed it on my nerves, because you knew she'd never argue with that. She's so desperate for love she'll believe any lie we feed her as long as we call her family." My heart didn't just break in that hallway. It turned into a weapon of pure, cold logic. I realized in that moment that my parents hadn't just enabled Maya. They had used her as a shield to hide their own cruelty. They had stolen 10 years of my life, my confidence, and my sense of belonging, replacing them with guilt and a sense of being unwanted. Also, they could have a walk-in closet and a quiet house. And now, they were looking at my marriage, my love, and my husband's hard-earned life as a bank account to be raided. So there I was, standing in the shadows of the corridor. I had a choice. I could walk in there, cry, and make a scene that would ruin my own memories and my wedding photos, or I could play the long game and wait for the moment where it would hurt them the most. So that's the situation I was in, trapped between a decade of lies and a future they were planning to steal. Before I tell you what happened next, and the exact words of the toast that brought the entire reception to a grinding halt, I want you to pause and comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have kicked them out right then and there in the hallway? Or would you have waited for the most public, most humiliating moment possible to ensure they could never lie their way out of it again? I want to see your thoughts on the ethics of revenge before we get to the climax. I took a deep breath, smoothed my silk dress, wiped a single stray tear from my cheek so it wouldn't ruin my mascara, and walked into that bridal suite like I hadn't heard a single word. I smiled at my mother, let her fix my veil with her shaking, greedy hands, and I even hugged Maya, feeling the coldness of her heart against mine. I felt like an actress in a high-stakes thriller, playing a part until the final curtain call. The ceremony was gorgeous, held in a sun-drenched garden. But as I walked down the aisle and saw my parents in the front row, dabbing their eyes with expensive tissues they probably expected me to pay for, I felt a wave of pure, cold fury. They weren't crying for my happiness. They were crying for the paycheck they thought was finally within their reach. At the reception, the speeches began. My father stood up first, giving this long, rambling, hypocritical speech about family being the anchor in a storm, and how proud he was of the strong, independent woman I'd become, the same independence he forced on me by throwing me to the wolves at 19. People were cheering, clinking glasses, and looking at us like we were the perfect, reconciled Hallmark family. When he finished and the applause died down, I stood up. I took the microphone from the stand, and I could see the confusion on the wedding coordinator's face because I wasn't on the schedule for a speech. I started softly, my voice steady. I thanked everyone for coming and celebrating our love. And then I turned slowly to face my parents. I said, my dad talked a lot about anchors and family today, but he forgot to mention the most important part of our family history. He forgot to mention the time 10 years ago when he and my mother told me I wasn't allowed to come home because I was a trigger for my sister. The room went dead silent, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. I saw my mother's hand freeze midair with her wine glass, her face turning a ghostly shade of white. I continued. I spent a decade believing my sister hated me. I spent a decade feeling like a monster. But an hour ago, I stood outside the bridal suite and heard the truth. I heard how my parents lied about Maya's wishes just to get me out of the house. I heard how they've been playing nice for 2 years just to get to Marcus's money and use my marriage as a debt relief program. I looked out at the guests, Marcus's family, our friends, my bosses, and said, I wanted a family so badly that I let vipers into my garden. But today is about truth, and today is about new beginnings. I turned back to my parents and Maya, who was now trembling with rage rather than nerves. I said, the loan isn't coming. The estate is closed to you. The relationship is over. Security is waiting at the back of the room to escort you out. Please leave quietly or don't. At this point, I don't care if you make a scene because everyone here now knows exactly what you are. The silence was broken by my father slamming his chair back, his face turning purple as he called me an ungrateful, cruel brat. But Marcus stood up next to me, a wall of pure protection, and simply pointed to the exit. Security stepped forward immediately. My mother tried to wail and grab the hem of my dress, begging for mercy and family loyalty. But I stepped back, and she was led out, followed by a red-faced, shouting father and Amaya who was looking at the floor, her victim act finally failing her. The rest of the night was the best night of my life. The air felt lighter, the music sounded clearer, and the heavy weight I'd been carrying since I was a child simply evaporated. My real family, my friends who had let me sleep on their couches and Marcus's parents who had welcomed me without conditions, swarmed me with support. We danced until 2:00 a.m., and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a planet in a cold orbit. I felt like the sun. The aftermath was messy, of course. The flying monkeys of the extended family have spent weeks calling me cruel and dramatic for doing it publicly. But you can't humiliate people who have no shame to begin with, and I've found that those who defend my parents are usually the ones I needed to cut out anyway. My parents have even tried to threaten legal action for emotional distress, which my lawyer laughed at before blocking them. I lost the parents I thought I had, but I finally found the peace they tried to steal from me. The moral of this story is that sometimes you have to burn the bridge to light your way forward, and you should never be afraid to tell the truth just because it makes liars uncomfortable. Like this video if you were on my side and think they got exactly what they deserved for a decade of manipulation. Subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power and standing up to toxic family dynamics, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I handle it the right way, or was the public call-out too much for a wedding? I'll see you all in the next story.